Welcome, adventurers and gamers, to another epic episode of Roll for Insight, the podcast where we journey through the realms of gaming with the wisdom of a seasoned dungeon master and the unpredictability of a chaotic trickster. Today, we're diving deep into the labyrinth of wonders of Baldur's Gate 3, a game that's got more twists and turns than a mind flayer's tentacles at a dance party. I'm your host and narrator, Rue Diggs, here to guide you through the madness and magic. Join me on this epic quest. We have a truly legendary panel. First, let's welcome the master of all things dice and lore, the one who can recite every spell and side quest in his sleep, the legend, the lead dungeon master himself, SPG. How many nat 20s are you planning to roll today?
Ooh, all I need is one, baby. Just one.
Well, thanks for joining. Next up, we have the man who can turn a goblin raid into Shakespearean drama, the master of mayhem himself, the maker of chaos. How many barrels of alchemist fire have you blown up this week?
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
but I look forward to talking about it.
And finally, the rogue who could sneak past a dragon's horde without breaking a sweat, the enigmatic David Wilson. David, what's your favorite way to derail a campaign?
Nag everyone and go back to the side quests.
Haha.
Let me pick up some more health potions, please. Let me check these empty crates.
All true, all true. So grab your potions, ready your spellbooks, and prepare to laugh, cry, and maybe rage quit as we embark on a journey to review Baldur's Gate 3. Whether you're here for epic storytelling, tactical combat, or just to watch your friends flail in their perception checks, we've got you covered, and let's get the adventure started. All right, well, if you've joined me now, I've finished my colorful intro. We're about to get into the review here of Baldur's Gate. So I want to say that each of our panelists here have spent over 100 hours. Combined, the panel has well over 1,000, uncovering its secrets and immersing itself in the lore. So the first thing I want to get into is the setting, the scene. All right, let's begin with the basics. What are your initial impressions when you first stepped into the world of Baldur's Gate 3? How did the game's atmosphere and setting draw you in? So I'm going to open it up to the panel, and I'm really going to get how they really thought about the setting and the backdrop of Baldur's Gate 3 and get into it. So we'll start here with SPG on my left.
Actually, you should end with me because I started in early access before this game was even a full-fledged game. You mentioned how many hours people have in this title. On Steam right now, I've got 766 hours on Steam, and I played this in early access on Stadia. I had 800 hours on the early access on Stadia, and then on my wife's account on Stadia, I had another 4.
Yeah, so it is pales in comparison to any of our hours in. I mean, I myself have 100 respectable 2 playthroughs, 2 completions. I believe Maker of Chaos has all of the achievements, and Wilson has spent all of our combined time in character creation.
Yeah, this is true. Just character creation.
I wanted to clarify. I don't have all the achievements of Baldur's Gate. I did originally, but then they came out with honor mode, and it got rid of my
You still
100%.
not went back for honor mode. Neither have I.
No, I
You
couldn't.
still not went back for it.
I've heard of the headache that SPG went through.
Oh yeah.
Let's get into the settings and scenes. Then I'll start with the far left and I'll work ourselves in. Wilson, when you first walked into the scenes, when you awoke on the Nautiloid, when you came down to the ground, what were your first impressions How did it draw you in? Was there atmosphere there? What drew you to play more?
It's been said 1,000 times, especially since the game came to full release and so many more people have got their hands on it. But it always reminded me, from the get-go, of playing Dragon Age Origins. The way that you start the campaign with the different people, or with your custom character, and the way that you would meet these new companions as you're going along. It harkened back to that, and that was one of my favorite games in my childhood. So it that from the get-go was a great way that I was pulled in. But the game all around, I mean, the atmosphere. You ran across the Nautiloid yourself. You've done that prologue. They do such a great job of setting it up. And I haven't played Divinity Original Sin, but the gameplay is very much like that. But with the cinematics that they've added on top, it makes that type of turn-based RPG. It just adds an extra level of immersion. It adds an extra level of interest that you didn't get in previous turn-based games like that, or not typically. So yeah, it was just awesome, man. It was so awesome and impressive in all these different aspects.
Well, great response. Maker, what were your feelings about the settings, the backdrops? If you could draw comparisons, how did it keep you playing more?
Um, I think it was, the areas, the characters that you met along the way, or like that you met in that first area. It kept it intrigued. Lots of dialogue. Like I played it initially on Stadia, like Wilson and many others, and I think it's a very good start to a great RPG. So
Great. And SPG, setting pieces, backdrops like the Nautiloid, backdrops
So
like yeah,
yeah,
go for it.
let me give you a little bit of backstory here. The Nautiloid has changed. The
Oh, so
beginning
much.
of the beginning of the game was vastly different than what we ended up with. The Nautiloid, you had a whole adventure on the Nautiloid. You explored the upper, lower decks, and then you finally make your way to the helm, and that's where you run into the chaos. Now, originally there wasn't a flaming sword, you know, the one I like to claim every time we do a run. That flaming sword wasn't even there to begin with. And anyway, but so that Nautiloid, the beginning adventure through the hells, as you can see, because this was always there. The hells you could see that you were traversing in the background. The dragon meeting Lae'zel on the Nautiloid was always well polished and always looked awesome. And believe it or not, I'll get into that later, but she was one of my characters that I was just frothing at the mouth to play as, because it always seemed like it was her story, just from the way the opening cinematic played out and then what you experienced. But the biggest thing for me was playing through the first act. The first act is very robust, and everything that they let you have in early access was not in Act One, but you got like 79% of Act One, and that just drew me in. I played it for over and over again to try things different ways, found different tactics just from trying weird things. Um, Combinations of spells and surfaces. It was just amazing, and it drew me in. And then all the little story threads that were kind of sprinkled in that left you hanging. I was just dying to get into the full title and kick off a full run. So I hit the ground running. It was an amazing beginning experience for me, even in early access.
Great. So let's get into character development. And you touched on it with Lae'zel. She obviously intrigued you into playing more. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna ask people different questions here as part of the character development. So Wilson, I'm gonna start you off on character creation. This is obviously a crucial part of any RPG with 29 subspecies, and each sort of um, background, having the three different choices, which created different play styles. How did you approach character creation in BG3? Because I think you would be the most
Goodness.
methodical to sort of take this one.
Well, there's so much to it. I mean, they don't just give you, okay, so do you want to be a boy and a girl? Do you want to have brown hair or ginger? Like, it's, as you say, there's all these different species you can be, and they're not just species. You're also, in the character creation, you're picking your class, because obviously it's a D&D game, so it's like fighter, mage, warlock, all these different things, rogue. Um, and then depending on the class that you pick, say you pick a paladin, there's subclasses of that or subclasses of wizard as well, and it's character creation really does make you think, in Baldur's Gate at least. It really makes you think about who you want to play right from the get-go, who your character is, what their backstory is. I mean, that's even one of the elements is background. You pick, were you a chaos bringer when you were coming up? Were you a bit of a charlatan, or were you raised as a soldier? Were you raised more religiously? You get all these different choices that have impacts later in the game and throughout the game. That, I mean, maybe you can just roll with what it gives you. You can just be a generic Tav, as the game gives you the name, and pick the default stuff with the custom character, and it will still be fun. But if you put a lot of thought into it, it pays off as well. It really does pay off, especially to the way that you play. Say you want to have an evil run. Like I say, one of the backgrounds you can pick is Charlatan, and another subclass you can pick is a Paladin Oath of Vengeance. Well, charlatans are criminals who would get bonuses throughout the game every time they do something that's sort of mischievous or criminal. And a paladin with an oath of vengeance is constantly seeking to murder people, especially evil people. But there's so much you can put into the character creation, and that's without getting into the actual character building element of it. I mean, there's so many people who love making their character tall and muscular, or fat and silly looking, and there's so much variety, especially with all the species that they've got. I mean, one of the species, I'll end it with this, because I know I've talked and I could talk about this for days. But one of the species, Dragonborn, we've all had fun with the Dragonborn race, right? You can change the shape of its scales and things like that. You can change the structure of its like the protruding elements of its face, do you know what I mean, and its horns and things. It's so cool, the layers that they went into to be able to give you elements of personalization to make your character. um honestly, I spent, do you remember when we all first got the game and you guys were all starting your campaign and making your way through the prologue and making your way through act 1? If you remember, it took me genuinely 3 days of you all playing the game while I'm sat in the character creation screen to eventually come out with the character that I wanted. Do you remember that? Because it did. It took me 3 fucking days. 3.
Yes, and
Yeah,
just like the character.
I was leaving
Go for
Act
it.
1, and you were finishing character creation.
Oh, but
And
hey, bro, I
just
love my character. I spent 400 hours in that campaign, maybe longer. Oh God, so great.
Well, just like character creation, you took your time with that answer, but we appreciate the authenticity that you brought to that response. Maker, I wanted to get your opinion on this one. How did you find that your choices impacted your gameplay experience? Did this game bring to you more autonomy than other games, or I believe what opinions did you have on that one? I don't want to fill the gaps for you.
So for the entirety of the game, or like just the first act?
Your overall, this is a review how you feel. We're not
Okay.
doing act 1, act 2.
No, okay, I wasn't
Give
sure
your
if we were
yeah.
splitting it up, but to me, I thought the choices and creation were very good for Act 1 and 2. 3 is when I started to get kind of bugged by it, because it really feels like it pigeonholes you towards the end, where there's select things that need, like end of Act 2 and Act 3 has things that need to happen that they kind of force you down. And I kind of wish there were more options. There were more maybe pathways you could have taken through that. So to me, I think it's good. I always compare it to like the Mass Effect trilogy. If you've ever played the Mass Effect trilogy, It's fairly open in Mass Effect 1 and 2, but when you hit Mass Effect 3, it there's only like 3 main endings that you can get. And I kind of wished it branched out more and felt like my choices actually changed and created this massive new ending, or like an interesting new ending, but it didn't feel that way to me.
Yeah, and great because I wanted to capture that perspective because I've heard
Yep.
you say it before. SPG, in terms of characters and that topic, and feel free to take this anywhere you want. But I wanted you to talk about evolution of characters throughout the game, and compare it to any other experience you've had, and how you felt Larian Studios did with the characters and how they evolved throughout the timeline.
Well, to start with, they had some amazing lore to work with, which Wizards of the Coast, the Faerun, it's got a rich tapestry of lore. You experience a bunch of it within the game. Maker's right. By the third act, you do get pigeonholed into a certain ending. And I believe they did that for a specific reason. I think it may have been something Wizards of the Coast wanted because
100%.
because this is supposed to be canon. Meaning, whatever. I mean, you're supposed to have variation and be able to change it to your, what you want. But like, all these characters are going to have their other stories written and maybe even D&D modules made.
Just
So
to clarify, Wizards of the Coast, what you're saying, Wizards of the Coast are the owners of the IP that is D&D, like the original lore that
correct.
is D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. Just for people who aren't fully aware of that, they're the people who own what is Dungeons and Dragons and fairies and blah blah blah. But that IP in and of itself, correct?
Yes. So that may have been why it ended up going that way. But yeah, man, the characters that they had were fantastic, man. Lae'zel, I fell in love with her story. She is basically she's a religious zealot. Like her whole life, she's been brainwashed to think a certain way. She's been trained. She's from the astral plane, so she's not even from Faerun. It's all like she abstractly knew about it, but had never experienced it firsthand. And her development, I thought, was just amazing. The voice actress just knocked it out of the park for Lae'zel. She's moody. She's not very nice. She's blunt. If you are a strong warrior, she will always try to bed you. um, uh, she's just very interesting. Will is another interesting character. Um, there's just so many, man. The overall story with the Illithid Empire, how Lae'zel is tied into that, made me play her for the first time for my first run. Like when the gates were finally opened and you could play an entire run from start to finish and experience the entire game. 99.9% of people went and made their own character and tried to make their own way into Faerun. Not me. I wanted to experience the world as Lae'zel. So I went through every encounter as Lae'zel. So I'm like, no, like I would be brutal. I only respected Vlaakith's and Vlaakith's will, and because of that, the tapestry is so grand for her and the choices that she can make as a character that I ruined my first run. I had to go back. I had to go back to the end of the first act and play through it again because I found out some devastating things, which is that Vlaakith is a liar. There is no ascension for Lae'zel, or at least at the time, there was no ascension involved with Lae'zel. They've recently added that ending in. It's not the ascension that you think, it's different. Go play it if you haven't played it. I'm not going to spoil that for you. But it's just really cool, man. I think the choices that they allowed you to make within dialogue and all that stuff was knocked out of the park. But I really, really enjoyed the story. It really, with the narrator, it literally felt like a D&D session. I come from D&D originally, which I'll be 1,000% honest. The rules of D&D are convoluted and can be very confusing. A lot of the times we would do some homebrew stuff. So we would use like 70 percent of the rules and just make them our own and tell an adventure and play in it. But at the table, you have multiple personalities, and the actual dungeon master is supposed to be the storyteller, but he's not quite in control of the story itself. He's in control of the dialogue and what characters do what or approach who, but other than that, you really don't have any control of your story, and it felt that way playing through the game for the first time. I just really loved it.
I wanted to come in because I did something similar to SPG, where my first full playthrough, I played as Shadowheart, which I highly recommend if you're going to play through the game as like one of the NPCs. It's either Lae'zel or Shadowheart, because to me both of them had the best like character growth throughout the game. Especially because like Lae'zel, you have to decide like, do you want to go with Vlad, or like do you still follow Vlaakith's will, or do you go against it? And similarly with Shadowheart has that choice. Should she follow Shar or should she not? And those choices, I feel it changes the character as a whole, and that's why like I really like this. Aside from like Dark Urge, I think those two and Dark Urge are probably some of the best playthroughs that I could say.
Yeah, I can't find one character that they stick you with that I didn't like as like a written character. Some of them are a little thinner than others because some of them you pick up late in the story. But I really think they knocked it out of the park, man. There's a lot of dialogue in there, a lot of choices, a lot of dice rolls. Most dice rolls are happen in the background, and you don't even notice that they're happening. And tactics wise, like I said in early access, I played so much trying different things, and you're pleasantly surprised. Larian Studios is one of those studios that will put something in the game just for the 2% of players that actually get to see it. Bethesda holds your hand to make sure you get to a certain mission chain. This really isn't going to do too much of that, and it's just really cool how you can change some things.
There's some like really cool things that you can like. For example, one thing I found was really cool. You can use the command spell to make the first tutorial boss drop his sword, and he just drops it, and you can pick it up, and then you can basically use it against him.
There's another thing in the Underdark when you first get there. This is still Act 1, but you run into a salesperson, and she asks if you've seen her husband. And you eventually in your journey will find her husband. He's a little befuddled. His mind doesn't work very well. He's very forgetful. And he's in a mushroom patch that's going to kill him. You end up saving his life. And if you're cunning enough, you find the noble stock mushroom that he was actually searching for. And when you get back to his wife, you find out that she sent him to find the noble stock. And you find out that noble stock will cure anything. And you're like, even your husband's condition with him being befuddled, and you find out that the husband beats the wife, or used to. And now the dude is in a stupor all the time, like probably chemically or magically, and she doesn't want him cured because she'll go back to getting beat again. Now you can take the noble stock and give it to her, and you get a bonus later in the game. You can buy noble stock, and it's 100% like a full rest for your character, which is priceless. Or you can give it to the guy and cure him right there. And he immediately snaps out of it, gets pissed off, and starts barking orders at her. It's just really kind of cool, but most people would have never have given the noble stock to the guy.
I did really want to briefly cut back to something. Wilson was covering over the character options. I did want to say one thing that bugged me that I really wish that they had was more voice options, because all like I think there's like eight total, but like all of them have like British tones to them, and then but like it would be really nice to have like a Scottish one so that you could put it with a dwarf, or like
nothing suited my orc. Nothing suited my orc. different
different voice tones, or even like dialects would where like that has like inflection of another language. That way you can differentiate. That would have been amazing for the game.
100%. 100%. I'll never say it was the perfect game. It was just one of the best things we've seen for a while. It was
Yeah.
really enjoyable. It was really
Oh,
different. It was well done for a company that a lot of people hadn't heard of. But there was also, I mean, we've all got, I think, the same type of critiques about the pigeonholed ending and whatnot. Certain characters not having the work done on them that they were meant to. I'm sure we've sidetracked your show a lot here, Rube, but just by nattering away. But there's just so much you can talk about with this game. There's so much that came
there's a
with it
lot.
that was amazing to it. That was things you can critique about it. That might be great next iteration for whatever Larian do. But yeah, it was such an amazing title. But
Yeah. You guys love the characters. That's a fact. I'd love to spend more time on it. Like I'd like to spend more time on Missouri, am I right? But let's keep
oh,
moving on.
You and your crooked balls. Let's go.
Moving to the gameplay mechanics. The game boasts a mix of D&D mechanics and modern gameplay elements. Uh, Wilson, I'm going to start with you on the first point. How well do these mechanics translate into an engaging gameplay experience? Because you've tried a lot of different games with different ways to engage players, and this is a turn-based combat. So I'm wondering how in the game did it bring you to continue to play more and more and find it like this pinnacle awesome experience? If you could, please.
so how I found the way to enjoy it is very different to what you were originally asked. So what did you originally ask again? Because I've got an answer for that, and I can tell you how I came
Okay,
to enjoy
I'm
it as
I'm
well.
sorry. I ramble.
No,
I
no, it's
ramble. How
okay.
well do these mechanics translate into an engaging gameplay
Gotcha.
experience?
No, yeah, no, it depends how well you are at translating them, right? And I know that that sounds like a silly answer, but there was a lot of people who picked this up because of the trend behind it, right? We all know that there was a massive trend behind this game in the lead up to the release of it. I mean, for most people won't bat an eye at turn-based games such as this one, but this one had such great marketing and they had such great relations with their consumers pre-release that so many people jumped on the bandwagon, even people who had never played a game like this in their life. And I know a lot of people who dropped off in the prologue or in Act One. It just wasn't for them. You were nearly one of these people, Rue. Am I right? Um, you were nearly one of
Absolutely.
these people. It didn't suit you. And that's what a lot of people fall into, right? It's how it translates to you. Can you translate it into a way that is fun for you? And if you were to play this like how Nads played it or how I played it by yourself, would you have had fun?
No, I
This is
enjoyed the
yeah.
experience I had in my playthrough where I
Hmm.
treated it like a Souls game, and the
Yeah.
autonomy of the gameplay mechanics were like an elastic band. You could play it the David Wilson way, talk to every
Hmm.
character, do every side
Exactly.
quest, explore every little nook and cranny, or you could do it the Rudix way, and everyone is a threat who wants to kill you, so better strike first, and who cares what they have to say. So
Yeah.
I loved that both the game catered to both play styles, and I would
Hmm.
say learning that made it more engaging for myself.
Exactly, and it caters to so many playstyles because it's like a D&D game. It's made by people who love D&D, and D&D itself, I mean, playing on a board, it's all about creativity and people just choosing stuff and winging it and things like that, right? Decisions on the fly made by people, and then the dungeon master having to cope with that and pivot. And they did a great job at encapsulating that. But you've got to do it within their rules, right? And their system isn't a rigid one, but it is a complex one. It's not like asking you to learn Java, okay? But it isn't the simplest mechanics to learn, all right? Like learn you can't just click A to jump, all right? There's certain buttons or hotkeys that you've got to use, and then you've got to measure to where you're jumping
Yeah,
to, and then every
cowboy. I hope you're watching this, cowboy. Go ahead.
I had no one particular in mind. Oh man. But Yeah, there's certain mechanics that you've got to come to terms with, and the turn-based combat, you've only got one action, but then you've also got a bonus action, and then you've also got your movement, but then you've also got a reaction, and it's learning how each one of these things are responsible for the different actions you can take and the different things you can do, and once you can understand how to work in the game system, and it isn't easy, especially if you've never played turn-based before. But once you've fuddled your way through it, or you've had a guide through it, which a lot of people did, and I think that improved a lot of people's experiences. It it's the world is your oyster in Baldur's Gate in Faerun. There's so many things that you can do, so many different interactions you can have. And as you say, those mechanics they allow you to play in so many different ways, whether or not you want to sneak through and listen to every piece of dialogue and read every book so you can glean every piece of information that the game wants to give you, or if you just want to be like, that person's eye says XP. All right, those people's eyes say XP. Let's kill them all. It depends how you want to play it, but you can absolutely do it in every way that you want to within their mechanics. But learning their mechanics is like it's like learning a bit of a language, right? I know it was a bit of a long-winded answer, but it is. It's like learning a language, and once you've learned it, it's really fun. As you went on to ask, I had so much fun in this game. I related it to Dragon Age Origins. I fuddled through with a little help from SPG, and in early access, halfway through Act One, I was competent and confident with how I could play and experimenting with different play styles and what might this do if I stack it with this? You know what I mean? But it takes a lot. It does take a lot. I mean, Ray was still shooting me in the ass by the end of the game, so the mechanics aren't straightforward.
You
Yeah,
know, that
and
happened in Dragon's Bane too. I'm seeing a trend.
Nah!
Nads was also slicing up Orpheus anyways. We move on. Maker, what's going on? I wanted to ask you, why do you think the turn-based combat evolved in this game beyond anything turn-based combat has evolved beyond before? I just want you to maybe talk about how that was possibly engaging. Was there different elements of perhaps this combat that made it more engaging than others? Or perhaps you weren't a fan of how the combat played out. Let me know.
Well, if you've played their previous games, Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, it plays extremely, at least most of the mechanics are very similar. I think the only difference is they adapted 5e, D&D 5e systems into it. And I guess you could say that's an evolution of it, but for the most part, it's mostly just the option of choice and things you're able to do combined with I think something familiar with a lot of people who do play like D&D and tabletop games.
Excellent. That
So,
that leads right into my next question. SPG, as a tabletop player, and you can of course take the play mechanics any place you want to. You have the crit die on me. But I want you to talk about how the gameplay felt like a D&D table. How were they able to translate that experience? Did they do a good job in translating the tabletop experience into a video game? You would be the one I would go to ask on that.
Okay, so I'm going to go to our run in our campaign as an example. The Gigolo run, I've lovingly termed it. But here's the thing. So, okay, at the table, man, what a dungeon master's job is to do is to wield a compelling story, but more than that, he's trying to build a movie in your head that you are one of an ensemble cast starring in. And you can do anything you want, even if it's stupid. But you're trying to be the character and trying to do stuff. So as an example, anything can go off the rails. Now in our run, just like at a D&D table, we all walk up to a half-exposed illithid brain twitching with a body going, "Ugh!" and then you hear "Help me!" and what did Nads do? Oh man, this guy's hurt. Nads being the fucking good paladin, he runs in to try to see what's happening, and what does he do? Oh, it's an abomination. He kills the brain immediately. He just squishes the brain. So
I
like
love it.
So like in our story, Rudigs, in this Gigolo run, we had no control over if the brain was gonna stay alive or not. Nads made a character decision immediately. His first instinct was kill evil, and he killed it. So like these things happen at the table, and they happened in the game multiplayer wise. So like it's relative. The only thing that's not relative is that in D&D at the table, the scenes are changing and the stories fluid and not so set in stone, so to speak. Like I said, if you're the main star of an ensemble cast, the sky's the limit of what you would do in a movie, and that's what ends up playing out at the D&D table. They did try to cram in the D&D rule set into the video game. It didn't fit like a shoe or a glove. They had to cut things out, like ignore some stuff. You're only able to get to a certain level because it would get way more complicated. You become like God, like unstoppable force. And I don't know, man. I think they did a really, really, really good job at balancing all those things and giving us an incredible adventure. Larian Studios didn't put microtransactions in the game, didn't sell us a bunch of DLC. I'm telling you, all the different endings they added into the game and the end banquet could have been sold as a DLC package for $30.
Yes, they've been adding DLC over the past year. They have been adding things here, there, and everywhere, from new weapons and new dialogue and new endings here, there, and everywhere over the past year. Maybe not a solid DLC, but a DLC's worth of content. And they're just doing it because they love that game.
Yes, and they always patched it and kept updating it. It didn't release as a perfect game, but it's in hell of a good shape now. Not that it was unplayable or anything like that. I don't want to give that thought out there, but there was certain bugs. Maker had an issue at camp once. Somebody disappeared or something. I had a couple issues like that as well. But there's permutations what they built into the game. So not everyone is going to have the same adventure. Not everyone is going to bring along the same cast of characters. And that's what is kind of beautiful about the game, is that I've played through it so many damn times that you can see all the character interactions, even with the ones that you don't spend so much time with because they're in the third act. It's just very robust. And they did a great job. Maker mentioned Divinity, Original Sin, and Original Sin 2. These were like templates for this game. And what I mean by that is the turn-based was there. The mechanics were very similar, were there. But the cinematics weren't. They had great voice dialogue, but there was no camera shots that looked like a movie, or you could see your character's face up close. There was none of that, and I thought it was very lacking in that department. I really liked those games, but they really hit it out of the park when they went the cinematic route with this. I'm very excited for what they're going to do in the future. Sven, the buck stops with him. He owns the company. He's not a publicly traded thing. He doesn't have shareholders to deal with. So I'm really excited for whatever they come up with next. And I believe it's going to be their own original IP, which sounds like Divinity Original Sin 3, but we'll see how all that goes.
Well, you mentioned bugs. The one that I distinctly remember. I mean, I know it wasn't the only one. I had probably several, but the biggest one I had a major issue was in Act 3, where Karlak, she's in my party, and you're going to the inoculation of what's his name? God dang it. Where it's like the fort in Act 3, and I failed one of my checks, and so she outspoke and was like, "Yeah, you're a bad dude," and so they threw her in prison, and so I then had to go down to the prison, like figure out like how to get in without being hostile, and then sneak her out. And then I got her out, and I explored the castle as much as I could. spent probably 2 hours in that area, and then when I went to go to the next part in Act 3, it kept saying that I couldn't go there. And then I tried. It said one of my party members was in combat, and I was like, "Who's in combat?" And I slowly started like moving characters around to the point where I figured out it was Karlach. It was an issue with Karlach, so I tried killing Karlach, and I did that. They were removed from my party, but then I tried reviving them afterwards so that they could be put back into camp. And when I did that, they were no longer interactable, and I could not put them back into my party. And so I had to. I looked it up, and apparently there was a bug at the time where if she goes to prison, sometimes it'll act like she is constantly hostile even after you get her out of the jail cell. So I then had to go back like 2 to 3 hours before she got put into jail and prevented her from being put in jail so that I could continue on. And it was just so frustrating. But yeah, that was my biggest issue.
That leads into my next topic. So thanks for being a great segue. The narrative depth. I wanted to get into how Baldur's Gate is known for its rich storytelling. So I wanted to ask each of you, because I'm a big fan of moments and quests in game that leave an impact on you. For instance, I will forever remember having the decision to be accepted into the Assassin's Guild and then having the decision to murder the people who allowed me into the guild. Because that's what a true assassin would do of a murderous guild. And I'll forever remember the autonomy to be able to do that. So I wanted to ask the panel, and I'll start with Wilson, some standout one moment that you really grab onto as a part of Baldur's Gate 3 where they really executed on their narrative and their storytelling.
Oh, I'm gonna steal SPG's one here, and I'm gonna go with Lae'zel's character development because she was one of my main characters. I had her, Karlach, and I would alternate my fourth spot in my party between different people, between Shadowheart and Gale and whoever. But I always had Lae'zel and Karlach in my party, and she was the love interest of my orc. And just seeing her character development going from this Gith Yankee who was basically brainwashed into understanding different aspects of the universe and becoming this softer, more delicate creature. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy to see how much they put into that.
She is a hardened warrior who, by the end of it, will hold your hand and watch a sunset in a beautiful moment.
That's it. That's exactly it. And that's what they did to you. That's what they did to you, and that's what they did to her for you. And it was crazy how well they did that over the length of that game. Like I spent 350, 400 hours in one campaign, all right, getting to know Lae'zel and Karlach and my character, getting to know them and seeing all the different dialogues that's possible and the way that they react and the way how at the end of it it's like a rebirth. It's like it's crazy what the characters all go through, and not just Lae'zel. I mean, all of them what they go through. I mean, Karlach literally can have a rebirth at the end of your game, and I won't spoil how she can, but she can have a rebirth literally at the end of your game. It's crazy what they can do for these characters. But
She
yeah,
couldn't when I
no,
played.
she did in mine. She did in mine.
There
Well,
was no option when I initially played. They added more
no,
options for
no,
Karlach.
I'm not on about fixing it. I'm on about what they originally did where okay, I will ruin it because we've already went into a lot of it and the game has been out now for a while, folks. Go play it. But Karlach can choose to instead of Orpheus or instead of your character, she can be the person who's transformed into a mind flayer at the end, and she's the only
Oh,
companion who can be. Yeah, yeah, exactly. You was in the game
yeah.
when you played, yeah. But she can literally have a rebirth and be. She's the only companion who can do that, but it's because of her condition. The condition of her having the whole metal heart and trying to treat it, and the only way to fix it, and they've changed it now. There's other ways that you can fix her now, I believe, but I haven't played since. But originally, the only way you could save her and she could live like freely, is by her being the mind flayer at the end and her taking that sacrifice. But she didn't see it as a sacrifice. It was, for her, it was a rebirth. And she was like, and when she did it in my game, she had to come to terms with it. And she was like, well, like, maybe I'm gonna have to learn to get a taste for brains, but at the same time, like, I'm free now. Like, I don't have to worry about going back and living in hell or serving some eternal debt or nothing like that. She was free. And it's the way that they did all the, and she's one of the thinnest characters, right? Like, the least developed, and even her story comes full circle. It's crazy what the time and the effort that they put into these people. Crazy.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, go man.
so specifically with Karlak, I looked it up. So this is the Gathering 6 months after, which that was added, like, was it like 2 months after release?
Yeah,
Um,
it was like patch 5 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 months after launch. But in that one specifically, they mentioned that there is a if you did the ending where she goes to Avernus, that there's a possible solution for her mechanical heart. So that to me it just sucks so much because my multiple playthroughs were all within like the first like 1 to 2 months. So all these things that they added afterwards that I feel like should have been in the game from the start, like, do so much in my opinion. Like, one of my other complaints is that you can't really originally you couldn't really see the ending to Gale's quest line despite completing it all, unless you played
you had
as
to
Gale initially.
As him, yeah. Yep.
That's
Yeah,
what I missed out on the end of Gale's quest line. I never finished it with the whole camp with the epilogue, and I only saw the ending for the 3 people I finished the game with, which was a little frustrating.
yeah. But I did want to mention like my favorite character arc, which was the character that I played as, which is Shadowheart. She's rude in the beginning. She's she's not a nice person, but at the same time, she is following Shar, which is again is kind of like the god of darkness. So
Basically, what Mega's trying to say is he likes goth chicks.
yeah, but her change though, like you can subtly see her kind of start to warm up to the point where there, like, because there's conflicts between her and Lae'zel, especially because they're both very hard-headed and blunt people, and then towards like the middle of the game is really when you get into her quest line where you go to the Shar Temple and you find the
Crush.
yeah, no, not the Kresh, the in the Shar's Temple, the what's their race called? I know it. Aasimar, the
Oh, yeah. The winged, the winged person.
yeah. That part where she's like, I can show you more of your past, to find out that her past was kind of altered. So what she thought it wasn't correct, and in reality, like, her parents were captured, and you follow up with that in Act 3, and it just, to me, it fits so well from Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3. Her whole quest line just flowed really well, to the point where, you know, if you choose, because the thing is, it is a choice at playing as her. You can be the basically a knight of Shar. You can you can be that warrior of Shar for her and be a bad person, or you can find out what really happened to you and become good. You know, follow Saloon. You know, a goddess.
You end up rejecting Shar and trying to make amends.
Yeah, but I love that choice. Like, to me, it's one of, like, other than Lae'zel, it's like one of the only ones where you really have a significant, like, character change choice.
Wait, can I ask, Mika, did you play a Shadowheart playthrough? Yes.
Yeah, that was my first playthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and you've also done one without Shadowheart, right?
Yeah.
So you know how she goes blonde at the end of Act 2, if
Yeah.
she chooses to be good. How does that work when you're playing as her? Because I've only ever seen it when she's your companion. But how does that work when you're playing as her? Like, do you get
Maybe
given a
you
choice
should.
to just go blonde, or does it not happen?
Maybe you should
No,
play
it goes
as
blonde.
her.
I'm going to. This is making me want to go play as her. Talking about it right now. I'm
She
gonna
goes
go do a
blonde.
Shadowheart
Rudig's
playthrough.
It's like it is if you didn't play her. Like her hair goes blonde, and it's right after you were explained like the whole situation from the Asimar, and that you well actually I believe it gives you the choice. It's like do you want to go forward with like become a
Changing
practicer
who
of
you are, yeah. You
yeah
probably like stand in front of a mirror with some scissors or some bullshit and
no
be like, "Are
no
you ready to change who you
I
are?"
it was just an
I don't think
like
it
a
plays
single
out like a
option.
teenage emo
No.
chick.
Teenage Wasteland.
No. No.
She's in the
No.
bathtub. I'm changing, guys.
With
Dyeing
razor
her hair.
blades.
No. It's
Like a whole
it's kind of like
Britney moment.
it just like fades to black and then it cuts back to you coming out and you're like, I guess this is the new me, right?
That's cool.
Uh,
That's cool.
So Rudig's asked two moments that shocked you narratively within the story, and I have two of them easy because one of them made me replay the damn game from the halfway point. I was playing as Lae'zel, and I'm this staunch Vlaakith warrior. I'm gonna get my silver sword. I'm gonna ascend. I'm gonna ride a dragon all the way to the right side of Vlaakith. This is gonna be boss. So after you visit the creche, between act, because 1 and 2 are kind of together, but between act 2 and 3, a person, the guy that you, I'm forgetting his name at the moment, but he is, you meet him at the bridge with the Githyanki. He is, he's got a silver sword. He is Kethric Voss, or whatever his name is. Not Kethric Voss. Voss is his name though. But anyway, so this Githyanki,
Kithrak Voss. There you go.
Kithrak Voss. And anyway, he's a big time character, but he comes to visit you, and he tells Lae'zel for a second time because when you do something within the story, and Vlaakith turns on you, and as you're playing as Lae'zel, she's even got inner dialogue screaming, "No, you've got this wrong. I'll triple my efforts, and Vlaakith will see me as who I truly am." And anyway, so this Voss character shows up to my camp, and he tries to convince me that Vlaakith is a tyrant, and I murder him immediately. I don't listen to him. I just kill him. Okay. And then I find out who is inside the prism. I meet the Emperor. And when I first meet the Emperor, I'm like, oh my God, the Illithid bastard is trying to help me? No, all of the Illithids die. She's like a religious zealot. And for those that don't know, Githyanki were enslaved and were created and enslaved by the Illithids. And at some point, after multiple breedings and whatever else throughout their journey, a person was born that could resist the Illithid power, and she rose to become Mother Gith, and then she had a son, Orpheus, and the mother died. Orpheus took over, and Orpheus was enchained and imprisoned. But you're lied to your whole life and told that he died, and that now the Vlaakiths take over. Vlaakith is nothing more than a very powerful Githyanki that is damn near a succubus. There's a different word for it, but the Lich Queen. She's like a lich. She sucks the energy from her followers to keep herself alive. So she's been alive for anyway. So I get to this part and I see an Illithid, and it's my duty to kill them. I kill the Illithid. Game over. Credits roll. Because without the Emperor, you turn Illithid immediately. The call comes in from the Absolute to turn, transform, shapeshift, and you do. And it's the end of the game. And I sat there for 30 minutes trying to decide, do I kill this guy or not? And then with my jaw on the floor, I went back and did it a different way. And I was still not against Vlaakith, but So then I made it all the way to the end and I hated it. I had to replay it. I had to. Another time when you at the very end of the game, you meet up with the Emperor again and a decision has to be made about Orpheus, the Emperor, and yourself if you're going to turn into an Illithid. And I sat there on that screen for 30 minutes not making a decision, not knowing what to do. So the narrative is pretty damn good. You do get pigeonholed at the end though, but there was points where I didn't know what to decide because I was playing as the character.
I kind of I did want to say I definitely kind of wish there were options other than the Avenger style like ending there. Like I always harken back to when I think of like some of the best like choice based options for RPGs. I think Fallout New Vegas, where like at the end you choose like which faction you want to be, or if your like talking skill is so high, you just basically tell them all to like, hey, let's be peaceful, and you can convince them to not fight. And I kind of like that that option exists in that game. Whereas with this one, it's just like you do it or you don't type scenario. Like it's either bad or it's good. There's no real like kind of like in between options. And I did want to say, like you talked about how you didn't like how it ended, and it made me think of when I first played the game and I got to Act 2. I got to the tavern, the lights. What's it called?
Last Light of the Inn or something like that.
Last Light Inn, yeah.
Last Light, yeah.
Yeah, and I got there and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, talk to her about protection. I go upstairs to the saloon priestess and immediately get attacked and she gets kidnapped and you only have like a couple turns to stop the dude from like taking her, and I wasn't able to kill him like within that time frame, and so he took off with her. They lost protection, and then the like night monsters showed up and murdered everyone in it, and to the point where I was just like, I'm reloading this. I just spent like the past like 30-45 minutes trying to save people here, and too many people are dead. I am not having this happen.
And that's what makes honor runs so difficult, because one mistake and your run is either messed up for characters you wanted to take with you to the end, or you completely fail and die. And there's like when you exit the game, it saves. You're not allowed to just do reload in honor mode. It's interesting thing they added.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing. Let's move on. SPG, did you have two that you wanted to go over, or did you go over?
Oh yeah, I went over both. One was meeting the Emperor for the first time, and one was deciding do I turn to Lithid or not. Because Lae'zel would never. She would never.
Oh, okay. So it was the same
Yeah.
playthrough, just at the
Yeah,
end
yeah.
there you got to make a decision. Gotcha.
Yeah, it was two times that I got hung up. But let me give you a third example of how cool this game is. Early in the first act, a devil shows up named Raphael, and he tells you that I could take care of that thing in your head with a snap of my fingers, but I'm not going to help you now. I'm going to wait until you're at your lowest and your weakest, and you just don't have nowhere else to turn, and then I'll be there. Well, sure enough, in my first run, because I fucked everything at every corner because I was playing Lae'zel as I thought Lae'zel would be, by the time I made it all the way to the end, the only saving grace was the devil that popped up. And he's like, I'll give you the hammer, but... And then he had a deal for me, and I didn't want to do that deal either. So I reloaded and replayed half my game again. So like the second time I saw the devil was at the very end of the game. Now you can see him other times. I just happened to miss him in my run. But it was just incredible that they set a nugget, a little morsel for you to devour early in the game, and it pays off way later. It's just really cool.
It is pretty cool. And one thing that makes the game pretty awesome, thing that I like to relate to, is the exploration and the world building. Faerun is a vast and detailed world. And something I enjoy in video games is uncovering every single nook and cranny of the map that they've created, getting these secrets, and really discovering the land. Um, I wanted to ask the panel, and we'll start with Wilson. How did exploration contribute to your enjoyment? Do you think that they did that right, or was exploration more of a chore?
So we made jokes when I first played this that I did it wrong, right? Because the game it's built like D&D, right? There's so much to do in the world and there's so many aspects to it. It's almost like it's like a what's it called when you've got like a preset board SPG? What's that called in D&D?
What? I'm sorry. What are you talking about?
When you've got like a
Like
pre-built
a
campaign and it's
box?
got
Oh,
certain
like
A box campaign, you mean?
box campaign, yeah,
like
like a box campaign, and there's
Oh, a
so many
module.
different
a
You're talking
module.
about
yeah,
a
Yeah.
module.
module.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. So in a module, there's so many different things you can do, and no one's expected to go around to every single nook and cranny in one run through, right? There's things that people might ignore or things that you might look over. It just depends what the people who are coming to the table decide to look at themselves, and this is very much in that way. So if you role play your character, you're probably not going to end up in every single aspect of the map. Well, I'm also a bit of an avid gamer who compulsively ticks everything off. So as I've already said a couple times in this show, I spent like 400 hours plus in one run through, going to every single corner and every nook and cranny, and making sure I did every side quest in every room, and
Did you?
it's
Not only did you talk to every person, you probably talked to every animal in the game, didn't you?
I probably saw 90% of what you could manage to see in a single playthrough. I probably missed maybe 10% because they've got so many different things, but I probably saw about 90% of what's possible to see in a single playthrough. And there's a lot you can see. There's a lot you can see. So they give you so many options in terms of that. If you're the type like I am, where you're gonna want to tick everything off, I did burn out a little come Act 3. I won't lie, but I don't think that it was that the quests were bad or anything like that. It's just there's so much to it. I mean, if
Yeah.
you've not got the endurance, eventually you will. And I did. I slowed down towards the end, but there's so much you can do. And I will say, in Act 3, I wish there was more payoff quests, but there are some quests that pay off from Act 1 and Act 2. Well, there's quite a lot, but I wish there were more that developed personally, or that you could see more of the city. That I wanted there to be more to do side quest wise there, even though I was burnt out on them. But yeah, all around, I think they did a great job in terms of their quest lines, the way that you could pursue them, and in terms of the way that, like I said, they can carry on from one chapter to another. But there were a few drawbacks. They did miss out on a few things. There were things that were scrapped or things that didn't fully add up. There's certain because there's so many permutations, you can get bugs where it'll pretend like you did something earlier in the story, or like you didn't do something earlier in the story, or in a certain side quest, and something will be triggered, and you'll just have to go, oh, okay, well, the game decided that that's what happened. But I don't hate on Larian Studios for that at all. Like I said, there's thousands of permutations in this game. I can't remember the exact number, but do you remember them bragging about the thousands and thousands of endings, or the millions of endings that's technically possible because of all their permutations when the game first came out? Do you remember that?
Yeah, but in reality,
1700 or something?
Yeah, it was
1300 or
something like
yeah,
something?
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
in
But in
reality, it's
reality,
not literally that.
there's
Yeah,
there's
but
like 4 or 5 main endings, and then I think that they were like talking about the side quest, like what you did on the side quest and what happened to the NPC
exactly.
afterwards.
Well,
It's
how
not
Baldur's Gate
necessarily.
looks overall. Yeah, all
It's
the
not
different aspects
literally.
of.
Well, now at the feast that they added, which could have been DLC, like I stated earlier, there's letters from all of those NPCs, like a whole bunch of them
Yeah.
anyway, that you can read to get caught up on. It's not the same as walking up and talking to them. They all could have been at the party, I guess, but you know.
Oh, that would have
Yeah.
been like because I did like the little feast that they do have right at the end of Act 1. So like doing something similar, like because if you save the village, you get that cool little scene
Mhm.
at the end of Act 1, and that would have been really nice to have also, um, like have them there.
I
Well, I
prefer the
wanted to
goblins at
ask.
the camp. They party harder. The goblins do.
I wanted to ask you, Maker, you're experienced with a lot of different media forms that do a very good job in world building, and I think you have a good grasp on what makes good world building. And I wanted to comment on Larian's ability to do that. Do you think they were able to pull it off? Do you think they had some certain strengths in areas, some weaknesses? Just some comments there if you could shed some light.
I think the world building's fantastic. I think the little, even the smaller quests that tie in, um, the little the musician in the first act that you can talk to, and by act 3 you see them at the end, and they're making that song that they were talking about when you first saw them. There's and just the environments themselves with the forge in Act 1 and the Underdark, the just all these. It doesn't even have to be like interactions. It can be things that you find, like you find a letter in a nest of harpies in Act 1, which tells of like a lover's quarrel or stuff like that. It does a fantastic job with all that. I don't think I have any complaints.
10 out of 10. Um, SPG, when it comes to exploration, why do you think Larian Studios, or can you describe how they created a game that doesn't feel like map ticking but brings the joy of exploration? How do you think they were able to make this happen?
Well, an interesting thing is if you look up D&D images, you're going to find all different kinds to where Faerun looks different in each one. What they were able to do by taking what's only been in people's imagination, a vibrant, lore-rich world filled with interesting characters and devious magic and vengeful gods. It's a great tapestry, but it's never really been visualized so much, meaning like the actual topography and like Boulder's Gate itself. There's a whole bunch of different drawings that you can go look at, and you can bring up modules that show detailed structures of some of the city. It's very interesting. I think they did a really good job. Did they make the Boulder's Gate from like actual Faerun? Not really. It's very, very large. Now they added some of the high point locations. You can't have everything in. But I think for what they were able to do, what they were able to get away with the permutations, and the visual style they went with, I think they did knock it out of the park. Exploration all by itself. I like the what is it called? Fog of War that's everywhere. So like if you walk up to a door and it's locked and you can't see beyond the door, you can't see the room beyond the door because you don't know what's in there. You haven't opened the door yet. It's that kind of stuff. That's more of a mechanic really, but it just so when you're involved in dungeon delving and you're running around, you may not know the entire area. It's not well lit. It's not mapped out for you. So I think they did a good job of keeping you engaged. And they drove people like David crazy because he had to look in every chest. He had to look in
Oh,
every
yeah.
crate. Can I reach that? Well, what is it? Can I take it? Is it useful?
Although, bro, you were thanking me for a few things when we were
I
first
was.
playing it through because there was a couple of silly things that people shouldn't bother looking at that I did, and it had these daft little hidden things in. Like, do you remember that chest that they patched out that you could carry everything in?
Yeah,
Oh
that
my
was cool.
God,
That
that
was cool.
chest was
Now,
awesome, and I
something that's
found that. I
yeah.
found that.
Now, I think
Ah,
they patched that out, but Larian
the-
Studios hardly ever does that. If it's something the players are utilizing, they usually leave it in. But Rudigs, let's cut back to you for a second. You had an interesting experience. You had an item that saved the day, didn't you?
Yeah, the haste grenade or the haste spores, right?
Yeah,
Oh, they're
the haste
useful,
spore
isn't it?
grenade. So we were at the
Yeah.
very final boss, and everyone ran out of everything. Rudig's had one action left, and there was no way we were going to do the damage we needed before this platform was about to dissolve and we were going to fall into the abyss. But Rudig said, "Oh wait, what's this? I have this grenade." He throws it down. We get the kill, saves the day. I believe he even became the absolute, and he sat on a throne.
Yeah. The true ending of Baldur's Gate 3, if you look it up, it's actually going to be canon.
Well, what you so to explain what a haste spore grenade is there's a spell called haste, and what a haste condition does is instead of one action, one movement, and a bonus action, you get two actions. So when he threw that down, everybody instantly got another turn, and we were able to complete the final boss. It was quite amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. Sometimes you pull out the tricks you got in your bag at a good time. Sometimes it's about holding on to what you have in your inventory until you need it, because you don't want to, for instance, use your action surge right off of the bat. Perhaps you want to save it until a different time in your playthrough, and it's that
Yes, like-
kind of tactical playthrough that makes it feel like a tabletop, and it excites you in different ways than other games don't challenge you.
Yeah, the wrong thing to do would be to use all your actions and then use your, to get those actions back, your action surge, and then use fancy footwork and then end your turn. That is unacceptable.
Well, like I want to talk about here on the next subject is interactivity and player's choice. So the player's choice in this game is the hallmark of Baldur's Gate 3. And I wanted to ask you, Wilson, because I'm sure you go to sleep thinking about the decisions you've made in this game. But perhaps a decision that you think screwed over somebody else in the game. And do you think the weight of the decisions really do keep you up? Did you really think about them, or were they kind of just whatever passed through? Like, how much of an impact?
Oh, well, listen, when you cast a level 6 sustain spell and you've only got one level 6 spell slot left in an intense fight, and your friend shoots you in the buttocks because he thinks you're the enemy, and it wastes your spell. All right. Yeah, no, these things keep you up at night. All right. These things actually make you lose trust in people. All right.
Yeah,
They
broken
degrade
concentration, more like
relationships.
broken heart.
Yeah. Broke, exactly. Burn bridges, more like, ooh. Uh, no, mate, the decisions you can make in this game, SPG already talked about it. You will get to a point if you're role playing your character, and it seems like you're doing the right thing, and it turns out that it was never the right thing ever from the first place, and it screws you royally. Oh my god, yeah, no, there was things where for days I was stunned. For days I was stunned. And SPG can even talk about this more than I can, because he did a playthrough, I think, for every single character, and each one of them has nuances that you don't understand until you truly know that character. And it's crazy. Like I've said it so many times, it is crazy what they put into the people that you can play as and the people around your character. Yeah, there's so many things that make you take that step back, and not just joking around with Ray here, with the amount of times he shot me. I know there are things that keep you up and make you think, wow, well, what happens if you do that differently? What could they say? It's so
Ray,
much depth.
listen. In Ray's defense, he just thought there was a lot of owlbears to kill. He thought there was a lot of owlbear enemies.
God.
Well,
Oh.
thank you for that answer. Maker, did you want to answer the same question?
Well, I feel like yes and no. Like I kind of wish our choices, specifically like what comes to mind that I would probably complain about is that doing the Dark Urge run
Yeah, the evil
specifically,
run.
I really wish there was an option to side with the bad guys. Like if I'm gonna play a bad playthrough, it would be really cool if you could side with them. There are some quests like you can do if you do kind of a bad run, and there's a specific NPC that you can get. Um, if you like decide to kill like the village, and then you can subsequently talk to Ketherick, and kind
You
of
should
do
have.
like a small quest, but then there's nothing beyond that. Like,
Yeah, you can recruit. You can recruit Minthara, which is an evil
yeah,
character. She's still evil, but she's not being controlled by the Absolute anymore by then. But it's very light and limited. You should have been able to recruit
yeah.
Nier. You should have been able to recruit Ketherick Thorn at some point. The evil run should have been thought out just a little
You
better.
were meant to visit
Like
the
I
upper
think
city in Act 3. You weren't meant to be limited to just lower city.
one thing I really wish that they had done, like if like give me like an ending option where I could be with those bad guys that I fought in my good run, and like they are my party members effectively versus like the NPCs that I haven't killed yet. And if they're already dead, then do what they do like with the musician. You know, if she's dead, then if she's incapacitated, then a sample NPC shows up. So like a sample group. If you've killed all the other ones, another group of adventurers show up to try and be the heroes. That would be so cool. Like you as a bad guy fighting the heroes as an ending to your campaign. That would like
Yeah,
it's such a missed opportunity.
You would be at the top of the brain fighting off good guys trying to take it
Yeah,
down. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
hear ya. Yeah,
exactly.
that would have been really epic and cool for sure.
It would to me that would have escalated it to like a 10 out of 10 for me. Like something like that it would have been different than a lot of other RPGs that I've played before. And I wish it had something like that.
Well, well, I'm sure they'll add it to their notes after listening to this back. But
Hopefully.
back on the subject of interactivity and player's choice, SPG, how do you feel like the cast behind your main character, their interactivity, and your player choice really evolved throughout the game? And comparing it to other games, did Larian Studios do something different and above when it comes to having your party members? I mean, you can often find them sitting, chilling in camp, but are they talking? Are they conversing? You know, how do your choices evolve them? So I wanted you to comment and see how you felt about what Larian Studios did and their caliber of design in that area.
Well, Wilson touched on it a little bit, but there it's vast, man. So they've got all kinds of different dialogue options, and Wilson touched on the multiple endings and how many there was supposed to be. But technically, you can have 4 people in your party: your created character or your main character, if you chose one of the original first act characters that you can play as. But I lost my train of thought here. But yeah, so you can play as all these awesome characters, but they made them compelling in a way that you cared what happened to them. You're randomly walking around, and depending on who you have in your party at what time, during what location you're walking through, dialogue will pick up. So you could play the game with 3 companions and a maid character, or 4 companions, and there's like 8 or 9 companions total. Or like 8. So like you could have a completely different party makeup and have completely different dialogue conversations through some of these areas. Now, there's some thin characters. All of them aren't this absolute fantastic characters. The druid, Halson. Didn't like his character. He was a shape-shifting bear that liked to mingle, baby. He always tried to romance me. I don't want the bear sex. Get away from me, Halson. And but like all the characters though, like the main core that you're gonna actually play as, I never really used Halson. Um, but like you care about their inner workings of their story and how it's going to play out. You're interested in them. Most NPCs I could give a crap about. Most of their stories kind of suck. Most of these guys I was intrigued with. Asterion, I knew this vampire spawn could become a vampire ascendant. I just knew he could at some point. I was on it. Story wise with him. When it comes to Will, I didn't want to kill Karlach, but what happens if you don't? What happens if you do? Like they did all these things that were really cool and feel very pivotal. In the grand scheme of things, you do get pigeonholed into 3 to 4 different variations, but all the stuff at the time it's taking place feels relevant and very weightful. Even every time you got to roll the dice, you're crossing your fingers and hoping you don't come up with a botch, which is a 1, and you automatically fail. So I don't know, man. I think they knocked it out of the park with going the cinematic route technically, because all these mechanics showed up, except for the actual dice rulings that they added into the game. All these types of turn-based and the way they did their games were already here before. They had a really good blueprint to go from. They added in the D&D rules. They made the game way more cinematic, and with all the choices you're able to do, extremely compelling. And it just screams for multiple playthroughs. Not very many games can you put 400 hours in and not want to be bored to tears or pull your hair out. David did it in 1 playthrough, so I have to give him props for that. But the game isn't built for you to do that.
No,
The
it's
game is
not.
built
Yeah.
for you to have about a 70-hour run and not talk to everyone, not save everyone, and not see everything. And the next time you play through, maybe your race and class is different, and the characters you bring along with you are different, and you could have a completely different experience. As a matter of fact, if you don't save Gale, you can have a peaceful run. If you pull Gale out of that portal, no, I'd rather make me a wizard and leave him in. Because in our murder hobo run, we learned the hard way. We pulled him out, we killed him, and left him there. And 3 days later, he exploded all of Faerun.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that I don't I kind of I wish it like warned you, because if like after 3 days of like you playing the game and it just like
Hey,
blows up.
Gale, to be fair, Gale has a very long, deliberate, and asinine instructions for bringing him back from the dead because, hey, you
Yeah.
don't want me dead. Like, he explains it.
Well, then why make it so complicated? Like I hated
agree
that.
because I think because they want you to go, no, fuck this guy, I'm not doing that, and then have your world explode. I think that is like a joke from the devs somehow.
But the problem is that it then takes so long to do that again. Like it takes a lot of like go back in time to fix that. Um, I don't know. Like it. I like some of these elements, but at the same time, they can be quite frustrating. I do agree with you that it feels like you're not supposed to do everything. You're supposed to like go through it once and like do them what you think or your character is going to do. Because I played it as a game similar to like Wilson. I did a vast majority of the side content, and by the time I got like into Act 3, I was kind of tired of it. It almost felt like me and Rudix talked about this with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where like when it got towards the later part of the games, I was just kind of tired and just wanted to beat the game. Like even though there's more for me to do, I was just like, "Nah, I'm just gonna beat it."
Yeah, I get it. When it gets too long and you're ready to get on to the next thing, I completely understand. But I did again perfect segue into the next chapter of this review, which is called Challenges and Difficulty. So obviously, those are some challenges, length, but then again, that may not be the way to play it, as you're supposed to make certain choices and not see absolutely everything. But the challenges and difficulties in regards to the RPG elements. So I wanted to go over three aspects. One would be leveling up, next one would be puzzles, and the third one would be bosses. So Wilson, since you're on the left, how did you feel about the RPG and how it tackled puzzles?
Um, I don't feel like there was too many puzzles in the game, were there? I mean, yes, there was some here and there, time-based things and whatnot. The odd link these together. Although I say that, yeah, there were puzzles, the hidden things here and there that might annoy you that you got to find pieces
Puzzles,
that would
traps.
and not just puzzles. I mean, just puzzles is one way to put it, but more like Easter eggs, right? Where if you don't know, then you don't know. But if you read in a certain book that mugwort and lavender go well in this type of stew, then if you find a cauldron in the druid camp and you put those things in a stew pot, then you end up making an elixir out of it. Do you know what I mean? Little things like that. It's not quite a puzzle, but Easter eggs. There's a lot of hidden things in plain sight that they did, and it was clever that they did it. I feel like they could have done more to allude to the things that they hid, but also it's great to discover things so late on. I remember the actor Asterion. I always remember this. He did an interview where he was talking about, oh, people still haven't found with the game's been out for a couple of weeks now, and there's a scene that people still haven't found, and you'll have all heard about it now. The one where he gets burnt to a crisp by the crash, and then when you revive him, he has a Gortia that you let him get burnt to a crisp. Have you seen this online? Because if not, I can share the
Yeah,
clip easy enough.
it's really
But
funny.
yeah, it's really really funny. But it's coded in if you let him die when you explode the crash, then he will have an outburst at you, and it's just a weird little thing that like most people aren't going to let their NPCs die and then obviously revive them. But because that's a mechanic in this game, then yeah, no, it acknowledges that, and it's no, and that's part of a puzzle. So that's more of an Easter egg at the end of it. But the puzzle that you've got to solve is in that crash, and it's clever how they layer these things on top of each other. It's very clever. I feel like I would have enjoyed more puzzles. I do enjoy puzzle games, and I wish when you think of D&D, you always think of yeah, big fights and then puzzle rooms that they get stuck in, like Indiana Jones style. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the walls are closing in on us. What do we do? Think fast. I wish there was more elements like that. But they do exist in this game. They're definitely not there. I don't know if that answers your question.
You gave it the British clever. So I'm gonna stick to that as the review.
Love it.
Maker, how do you feel the game did in terms of leveling up in an RPG mechanic wise? I'm sure you've seen a lot of RPGs. I mean, personally, I was a little bit overwhelmed when it came to leveling up, long lists, which I had to read through, and everybody knows I hate reading. So I just wanted to get your opinion on how you felt the level they Larian Studios did with leveling up compared to other games.
Honestly, I thought it did a great job. Personally, but that's mostly because I have used
You
sites
like
like
reading.
D. No, 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 no. I've used D&D Beyond, which basically it feels like I'm using D&D Beyond because it pop when I put in the level, it'll automatically tell me these are what I get for leveling up, and it tells me like choose spells, and I click it, and I'll be able to choose my spells, and it's exactly like how D&D 5e is, which in my opinion is the most like new player friendly D&D experience. So I think it's great because it just checks all the boxes. I feel for like if it's going to be D&D as a video game, it did that at least for the level up
Cool.
system.
Yeah, you enjoyed the level up system. There we go. I thought I was gonna get a negative take on it,
No,
I'm
no,
I'm
no
the
issues
only
here.
one on the panel who doesn't like reading. All right.
Yep.
SPG, how did you feel the game did with its boss encounters? Um, and what kind of commentary can you bring to that and how Larian Studios tackled it? There's so much weight when it comes to these encounters. Do you think they were able to pull it off? And how did you feel about it?
There's 4 or 5 big major set pieces with huge battles that are pretty damn epic. You have foes that fall in spectacular manner with gods to replace them, visagry of gods that you have to kill. They did a really good job in building all those moments up. Like I said, there was a few jaw-dropping moments. The way they layered back to a little bit what Maker was touching on, the way they layered the D&D stuff into your of leveling up your character. Not only did I think they did a great job, but it's so robust. Like you know, you basically do build your character as you go, and then when you add feats into those, which are like bonus extra perks for your character, shout out to Fighter, they get a bunch of them. You know, so it can change how you do combat, how many attacks you get, all that stuff. um but yeah, the big boss battles, they got even more interesting. So not only do they have these set pieces that are really well thought out and elaborate, like the final boss and the Raphael fight with the awesome music, like all these set pieces are amazing. um uh, I think when you add in the honor run, the honor mode, um, it changes things significantly. Now, all of those set pieces and all of those major orchestrated fights that you're going to go in and do, now they all have legendary actions and legendary reactions, which means that if you're playing on normal and you walk up and you smack the monster with your sword, nothing may happen other than they take damage or you miss. But if that boss has a legendary action or reaction, all kinds of things can go wrong. As a matter of fact, there's a fight in the creche with I forget what they're called, the title of the character, but there's a Githyanki. As soon as you come out of the portal, or that you come out of the prism, um, this guy's standing there and he starts to fight you. Well, every time on honor run, anytime you strike him to do damage to him, he takes like half damage, and then a psionic a psychic sword appears next to you, and he'll keep spawning these swords as many times as you hit him, and then when it goes to his turn, all those swords take a turn. So like it can end your run really quickly. You need to like just like you do in Shadow of War, different game, different story, but how you have to look at the orcs' weaknesses and their attributes. You almost have to do the exact same thing in honor mode. If you've never fought the boss in honor mode before, uh, take careful consideration of what those legendary actions and reactions are. It changes the fight, and not being able to reload your save changes the whole atmosphere. Some people scum save, which is where they save every time the dice roll so that they can get what they want. Um, well, this game is so good, even doing that, you still won't see everything. So, I don't know.
He's on the
Um,
panel. You don't have to call him out like that, Wilson.
Yeah.
Sorry
No.
about that.
Yeah. No.
uh,
Yeah. No.
I did want to say something. I agree with the boss fights. Holy cow! I really loved like some of the boss fights. The end of Act Two, Ketheric fight, probably my favorite boss. And then on top of that, the dragon underneath in Act
Yeah,
Three.
in the worm way. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Some people never see that.
it's such a cool fight, and
Mhm.
and I think they do a great job with that. There are some that like I feel like they could have like done a little more to, but like the Act One fights I think are fine. They do their job and they feel like intro fights. And the fact that it gets so grandiose towards the end is great. Um, And that's my take on it.
Awesome. Well, one thing that this game was heralded for was the multiplayer experience. What does Larian Studios do that's unique in multiplayer? You know, how does the multiplayer aspect of Baldur's Gate 3 enhance or change the gameplay? I am actually the only one on the panel who has not played through the game single player. I have only had my hand held and I've worn out somebody's back SPG, getting me through the game not once but twice. So it's hard for me to comment, but what I will say on multiplayer is absolutely flawless when it comes to feeling like my own main character, being able to walk off, make my own decisions while things are happening, while cutscenes are happening for other players. I'm off in the back corner paying for a ghostgasm and having a time in the brothel while you guys are taking care of whatever paladin business in the other room. I mean, I've never experienced a multiplayer that gave me such autonomy. So Wilson, I want to ask you, um, what have you experienced a multiplayer game as fun as this? What are your thoughts on the multiplayer? Um, when it comes to co-op games, what did they do right?
Okay, I'll start by saying they did multiplayer very uniquely. The multiplayer game that we all played, you, me, Ray, and SPG, our Murder Hobo run, even though it was even a Murder Hobo run, which is silly in and of itself, that game was it was unique. All right, the way that we're running around and we're trying to take turns and doing things, and SPG's
David,
guiding
listen,
us
listen.
places.
I need to clip it, but the part where you turn into that like antelope looking thing and you jump from that height and look like your legs folded up like an accordion around you, like you broke every one of them. That was amazing, bro. I laughed till I cried during that episode.
It makes for some good moments. It makes for some good moments. Um, yeah, no, the multiplayer, I don't know. I don't know if I've got any critiques of it. It could flow a little better, in including everyone in clips, but it also allows total autonomy in that it allows everyone to be doing their own thing. But you can miss out on things. It's hard to always keep your party in the same place, especially when everyone wants to go do their own thing. We all end up here, there, and everywhere. But yeah, no, it's the
Um,
multiplayer is unique. That's my best way of describing it. There's not many games that play like that in a multiplayer way. It's at the end of the day, it's not a multiplayer game. It is a solo RPG with multiplayer integration. It's almost like a multiplayer mod. You know those mods where people
yeah.
fucking let you put Skyrim in multiplayer mode or Hogwarts Legacy in multiplayer. It's like that, but it's still but done really, really, really well. But yeah, it's a very unique multiplayer experience. What are you trying to say, Maker?
Oh, I mean, I can put something negative. The one thing that I didn't like. So this was a thing because when I first played it on Stadia, I played it with a full party of four.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have is when you do have a full party, you cannot have any of the NPCs with you. So if you're doing their quest lines, they're not there. And that always kind of bugged me because there are like little interactions with said character, especially if you're doing their kind of quest lines. And the fact that you can't even have them as like a small companion for that particular quest line bugged me a lot. Um, and so I sometimes get tired of multiplayer because when I'm with so many people, I do want to like see what's happening with that particular character with the story, and it's just not possible with unless you mod it and have like a be able to have a bunch of people.
Yeah, there's limitations, and
Yeah,
they could solve that by simply having a companion to the characters. But it seems like they're
yeah.
limited in what they're able to contain in a single aspect.
Like even just
Well,
like well, I was gonna say like even have them as like because you can have minions as a character, like just have it as like under you as like a minion, not necessarily as its own character. Um, that I would have that would have solved the issue for me, in my opinion.
and SPG, how do you feel that the gameplay changed for you from single player to multiplayer? Um, do you think they are different experiences, or is it more of the same?
No,
And how do you think they did on the multiplayer?
it's completely different experience with people because, as you well know, Rubigs, you get 4 to 5 people together. It's like herding cats, trying to get people to behave, trying to be focused, and it's hard. So, as an example, hey, are we gonna side with the good guys or bad guys? Oh, well, it depends who talks to him first, because Willie, he's got a problem. He's got a chip on his shoulder. Like, you don't know, you're not in control of the narrative at that point because everyone has equal share in it, just like if you were at a D&D table. I think that is phenomenal. I think they knocked that out of the park with the options and the fun and the comedy gold that can transpire. Now, a drawback, I'm not going to just praise its multiplayer. A drawback, it boggles my mind that you were not allowed to play as a companion character, any companion character. Meaning, if I'm playing a single player run and I invite you to my game,
Oh,
why can't you play as Asterion?
100%. I hate that. Like I have
Yeah.
to make my own character to join you. I can't just
Is
play
that
as
still
one
a
of the
thing?
side characters
Is
with
that
you.
still a
Yeah,
thing?
that
I
is
thought they
still
Yeah,
a
changed it.
thing. They
it's still a
fixed
thing.
it. They fixed it in a weird way. As Maker was complaining that you can't get the side quests with the side characters because if you have a party of 4, you're each main characters and you can't get rid of them. Well, they patched into the game a wardrobe or a mirror. Now you can get rid of those, so you can invite a friend in at level 5. He can create a character, start playing with you, and then when he, leaves, you can take his character and put it in the wardrobe, and then you can get another
Oh,
companion. That was not in the game when Maker played, but it is
yeah,
now.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but it is
Well, I
now.
mean, it still bugs me that I have to make an entirely new character to join my friend because, like, I wanted to join my friend one time, and I was like, okay, just let me join. Maybe I can just play. I want to see if I could just pick one of the origin characters
Yeah,
and just play as them within your game. Nope, you cannot. You have to completely make your entire character. And all I wanted to do was hop on for like an hour. I didn't want to have to make a whole character just to like play with this person, but I had to, and like I wish that they had that option.
yeah. So that boggles my mind that that's not in the game. That you can just play as one of the companions rather than making your own. But they did fix the fact you're stuck with them afterwards. But that would be my one
Yeah,
drawback. But
that
but
was
the
awful
the
originally.
but the having 4 different crazy mother effers running around in a world that gives you so many options, chaos is what transpires. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. And yes, Rudigs is Willie in that example. Many times in our Gigolo run, it would be like, oh, if I talk to him first, shit's gonna go south. I'm just letting you know. And then he would be like, no, no, let Nads talk to them first so we get, dialogue and good things happening. So
Nads, we think they have a weapon. No, let me talk to him.
Oh, well, a big part of the game, and our buddy Bjorn, shout out to Bjorn, favorite aspect of the game is soundtrack and atmosphere. The game soundtrack can greatly enhance the immersion, um, and often it's overlooked. People can often not even remember, but I can vividly remember right now the intro to Baldur's Gate. The tune is playing in my head, and I often like to grab the loot and jam a little tune skeets. So I do often think they did a fantastic job in creating a uniquely um Faerunian sound to their game and something that sticks in your head. But I'll give it up to the panel and I'll ask them, starting with Wilson, how did the music contribute to the atmosphere for you? And is there a standout song that is in your head right now that you want to just sing out loud for everybody?
Do you know it? There's the main theme song, which I love. I love the main theme. We all do. But the song when you first get into Baldur's Gate, where they're singing, oh, tell the tale of Baldur who founded Baldur's Gate. That song, I love that song, and it's playing in all the inns as you go into the city, so it gets louder when you step in the inns, and it's playing at camp when you're all back at camp, and it just sets a vibe. You know what I mean? It sets a vibe. It's like it's a change because you've just came out of the gloomy forest, you're making your way into the city finally, and it just kind of, I don't know, it changes the scenery just with that audio. Do you know what I mean? Even though the scenery itself has changed, just listening to it, you can tell you're somewhere new, that things have changed, that things are building up to something. And the composer, oh, who was his name? Borislav Slavov, and he did all of the music, and he is highly praised by Larian Studios, and highly praised by Sven for exactly what you're saying, for making a world just in that music, for making a Faerunian soundtrack. People love him for it. I believe he may have even won awards for it, although that's speculative. I can't remember.
And
I,
thank you for that. Yeah, go make
I,
it.
I know. I know they didn't win the Game Awards. That went to Final Fantasy 16, I believe.
No, but I think he won awards separately for it.
I
But
could look it up real quick.
yep.
Well, while Maker looks it up, why don't we get SPG's comments on how he thinks the soundtrack contributed
All I
to
have
the
to say,
atmosphere?
bro, all I have to say is Raphael killed it. And it's Raphael's final act is what it's called. And the dude is
Oh
a
yes,
G. It is literally like an
that's another one.
operatic. It's an operatic performance with operatic type music with big highs and even lower lows, and it feels like he's trying to drag you to the depths of hell. If you've never heard it, go check it out. When that comes on in the game, it gives me chills. Really, really good. Raphael's final act. That song did it all. The music ambience is great, all the way from the title card down by the river. All that stuff is really good. The subtle tones, as David said, when you get into trouble or you've just gotten out of trouble, like they did a really good job at the soundtrack for sure. But the standout would have to be Raphael's final act.
I have to agree with
let's
SPG.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Maker, I was going to ask,
I-
do you think after hearing this panel and these elements, and yes, that Raphael fight being a party to that, do you think this may be one of the pinnacles when it comes to soundtrack and gaming? And how
God, no.
do you think they did that? So no.
No.
Tell us
No.
where it is.
I think it's very good. Don't get me wrong. But like, I mean, I've found one award for best audio that they won, and that was at the 20th British Academy Game Awards, which I believe is the BAFTA. But like, Final Fantasy 16 kind of swept it, and it's hard to beat. Square Enix, their music department is just fantastic. It's a level above most other studios. But I think it's very good. It has some amazing tracks, but I also feel like a lot of the tracks are forgettable. Like it's good ambient noise, I feel, but nothing really like other than I think like Ketherick had a good track. Raphael obviously had probably the best, and but I wouldn't put it like when I think of like the best soundtracks of all time, like the pinnacle that you said, it doesn't come to mind. Like it's not. I have so many more games I can list that I'd probably put ahead of it.
Well, there we go. That's what I wanted to hear. Something in comparison when it comes to other games, because I know that you've had a vast library and Square Enix does do a great job. But you do have to give it its kudos for really creating a sound to its game. But I want to move on. We have reached final thoughts. And as we wrap up, I want to say one thing on my final thoughts. When a game plays out this well, it seems to come from developers who are invested and play the game. And I think when playing the game isn't clocking hours and billable time, it's enjoying the craft at which you are developing. The experience behind that is so much greater for that. But I'll open it up to the panel and I'll ask you guys, would you recommend it to others and why? So, Wilson, we'll start with you.
All depends if you got the patience for it. Like I started off explaining near the beginning of the show, it's not for everyone. The mechanics aren't for everyone. Turn-based isn't for everyone. But if you like that style of game, or if you're willing to try it and you think you could get into it, you will be rewarded. It's an amazing story. It's got some amazing characters, amazing cast. The actual voice actors themselves are now some well-known people in the voice acting world, some well-loved people and cherished people in the voice acting world. Just after this game, yeah, it's a wonderful game. I can't give it a 10 out of 10, but do you know, it was game of the year for a reason. It was one of the best things that came out recently. It's definitely pushing the genre forward. And do you know what? For that, I lied. I can give it a 10 out of 10. I can. I mean, with all its flaws, 10 out of 10 for being an outstanding game and pushing the genre forward. Go play.
Hey, you gotta give it. It's you gotta give it what you feel. So appreciate that. And Maker, why don't you give your final thought on the game, your recommendation, and I should have said it, so thanks for reminding me, your score for the title.
Okay. So for me, I I absolutely loved it. It is a great tabletop RPG that you can play with friends. To me, it didn't revolutionize the genre or even evolve it, because to me, um, it's mostly what they've done before, but then added the D&D, implementing the D&D elements into it, and they did a fantastic job with that. Uh, the downside is I just don't see like anyone else doing it, because they don't do it like Larian does it. Um, I mean, they could try and copy and emulate, but we'll see how that goes. But there were too many issues I had on my first playthrough that I just like the things that were added later that made the game better. It left a sour taste in my mouth because I had already spent like hundreds of hours in the game already, and I didn't want to have to redo all this stuff just for a new ending or a new thing. And so to me, like it was my second favorite, just behind Tears of the Kingdom. So I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 10.
All right, awesome. And SPG, what would be your
Well,
final thoughts and score out of 10?
well, I'll give you some thoughts and I'll leave it at this pretty much. It was maybe the game wasn't super revolutionary in certain ways. I think it was in player choice. Um, for the acts and the stuff. Maybe not the ending that you're kind of tied to, but character choice, they just knocked it out of the park. But what I would say is go try this game, guys. If even if turn-based isn't your thing, I believe PlayStation still gives you a 2-hour demo. I think Xbox does the same thing. If I'm talking out my ass, I'm sorry, but definitely go check it out if you can play the demo. They did at some point have it. But I would have to give it a 9.5. Just because it was a breath of fresh air. And what I mean by that is maybe it didn't push all these things super forward and change the industry itself. But out of all the games we got, this one was the one that was the most feature complete. Yeah, they added some things. Yeah, there was a few bugs, but there was no microtransactions. They weren't trying to sell you upcoming stuff that they hadn't even worked on yet. Larian's business practices so far have been above board and have been awesome. And I can't wait to see what they come up with in the future. But I would say 9.5 for the condition the game was released in the year it was released.
Awesome. Well, for myself, I will definitely say the multiplayer experience for me is my final thought. I will always look back fondly on all the fun times I had. It brought us all together weekly, and I think that is one of the best parts of gaming for me. Getting all touchy-feely, but it's that multiplayer. And for those times alone, I'd have to give it, an outstanding score because when it comes to gaming, you can play by yourself and you can have a time, but when you get to share it with others and you have the autonomy and the freedom and all these story options, these twists and turns, these things they put in front of you, characters that have these reactions, these facial expressions, there's so much. There's so much here, and there's so much content. And I would get together with a bunch of friends and definitely start a run because there's lots of fun to be had. Larian Studios, congratulations. I never thought I'd play a turn-based action game, but you got me to do it twice. And for that, you kicked me in the butt, and I'll go 10 out of 10. So, Wilson, I'm joining you.
Thank you, sir.
In conclusion, I want to thank all the panelists for sharing your insights and experiences with Baldur's Gate 3. It's clear this game has captivated us all in different ways. Join us next time for more in-depth discussions and gaming beyond. Roll those dice for your intuition, your charisma, and your perception. I hope you all get criticals out there. And thank you, panelists, for hanging out for our 1 hour review that is closing out at 2 hours. So the game, it was that good, and we had to talk about everything. So we'll go one by one, say your goodbyes, and we'll be out of here, Wilson.
Thanks for having me on, bro. It was a great time. Good talking to you. Thanks to see you all in the chat. And yeah, peace out. Come join us in Cyborg City.
And then he's gonna come kiss me.
That wasn't me.
Say your goodbyes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you would say it was me.
He's like, I didn't do it.
No. Yeah. Hey now. Yeah. It's been great. Everybody go play some games. There's a ton of great ones out there, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side in Discord.
And SPG, close us out.
Rudigs, I just want to thank you, man, for bringing back some sort of review thing to talk about gaming, because that's what all of us love is gaming, and we don't really discuss games in that much detail. We discuss the industry and where it's headed, what we don't like a lot, but we don't. Whinge. Yeah, we whinge, and I am the old man shaking his fist at the clouds when it comes to the video game market and where it's headed. But I just appreciate that you had me on for this title, and lovely to see the reviews come back on Cloud and Console, man. Great job.
Awesome. Well, this review wouldn't have happened if I hadn't taken space on your back and you carried me through twice. So shout out to you for letting me experience this awesome title. Thank you. This has been an awesome review, and we'll catch you on the next one. Everyone, be kind out there.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then we're hitting...
Why try to believe in me? Why try do I even need to? I die with the season leaves. I glide with the season breeze. True, my mind so easily spooked. I ride just to be the me. Oh, fine type super decently smooth. Nice type but as sick as beats. Groove, groove. Wanna go to pussy in a box.